Hello, football fans, and welcome back to the sixth installment of the Steele podcast. And we have a good one for you guys here today. Between all of the chaos that has erupted over the course of week 3, some of the changes that happened in the top 25 over the past week, as well as some action to look forward to going into week 4 of the All Created Teams Dynasty. And what we're gonna do is we are actually gonna sim some of the games that aren't gonna be covered by myself, as well as some of the other content creators that are cooperating with me on this All Created Teams Dynasty here on Maximum Football 2019. So you're going to definitely want to stick around for that portion of that if you are rooting for a smaller team that doesn't get covered as much in this Dynasty. And you know, it's going to be a great time. I'm really excited for it. But before I get into it, make sure you hit that like button. And if you are brand new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, as well as hit that notification bell, because I would truly appreciate it. That helps me out tremendously. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some of the action that has occurred over the course of week 3. In the week 3 recap, so let's take a look at some of the more notable games that happened over the course of this week, as well as what results kind of transpired from said games. So first, let's jump into the Moravian Greyhounds versus Wheaton Thunder game, where Moravian entered that game as the number 5 ranked team in the country, coming in 2-0, playing against an 0-1 Wheaton team that took a huge beating against the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. But yet Wheaton looks like they learned something from their week 1 battle against the Blue Jays, because what ended up happening was that Wheaton not only beat Moravian, but they ended up shutting them out 6-0. So Wheaton will get their first victory on the season, whereas Moravian, they actually take their first loss on the young season. Next up, we have the North Central Cardinals, who came into that game as one of the more highly regarded teams in the country, coming in at number 8. They took on the Milliken Big Blue, who I know I need to adjust their uniforms just a little bit, but they came in 0-2, but they knocked off the number 8 team in the country, beating North Central 28-20 in order to get their first win on the season. And then to get the upset train going, the Rowan Profs were 0-2 going into their game against the Alma Scots, who were at a quiet 22nd in the country, but they will not be ranked anymore, I assure you, because they lost to Rowan 35-24 in what was a pretty offensive game, and definitely Rowan's best showing, because they won their very first game. Then we had the Sulra State Lobos, who lost to Methodist in the previous week 47-14. They went on the road once again to play against the Albion Britons, who were ranked number 16 in the country, representing the National Athletic Conference. However, they ended up losing to Sulra State as they learned to get some more points on the board, finished the drives out, and they end up beating Albion on the road 25-21. It was a really good win for the Sulra State Lobos and that football program. Then we had the week 3 game of the week, which pitted the number 1 team in the country in the Otterbein Cardinals going up against the Adrian Bulldogs, who were also 2-0 but were ranked number 20 in the country. However, it was Otterbein that ended up coming out on top 20-7 in what was an exciting game where Adrian was ahead for a good moment. However, Otterbein took over in the second half and was able to pull away. It was an exciting game that was featured on my channel if you want to go and check that out after the end of this podcast. Then we had the number 9 ranked Hendrick Warriors going on the road to play against the 14th ranked Mooresville State Mustangs. Both teams were making their first appearance on one of these conference networks via the content creators as well as myself, and Mooresville State made the most of their opportunity to prove why they deserve to be ranked much higher than number 14. They ended up beating the number 9 team in the country 23-7. Then we have a former #1 ranked team in the country in the West Hartville Bantams, who took on the Pacific Lutheran Lutes, who came into that game 1-1. They definitely put West Hartford on upset alert, as it looked like they could have taken down what was then the #7 team in the country. However, West Hartford was able to pull away and win that game by a total score of 16-13. Up next, we had the #18 team in the country in the McMurray Warhawks go on the road to play against the Carleton Knights, who were 1-1. McMurray was making their first appearance in the top 25. However, that will be in jeopardy because of this loss on the road against the Carleton Knights, who were an unranked team in their own right. Then we have the Southern Virginia Knights go on the road to play against what was then the #4 ranked team in the country in the William Patterson Pioneers, who were 2-0. However, what ended up happening was that Southern Virginia was able to get a last-second touchdown. They went for 2, they didn't get it, so William Patterson did have one more opportunity to get the touchdown. However, that is simply not going to be the case because William Patterson did come up short, and they end up getting upset at home by a hungry Southern Virginia Knights team looking to prove themselves on the national level, and they were able to do just that, hanging on against William Patterson and getting a very close win. Then we had the Rochester Yellow Jackets, who were part of the Week 2 game of the week. They went on the road to play against the Willamette Bearcats, which Willamette did end up winning 24-19. Rochester does deserve a little bit of a break because they did lose their starting quarterback in the previous game, and they were playing with their backup. However, the pollsters will likely not give them too much of a cushion, as a loss is a loss at the end of the day. So it'll be interesting to see how the rankings reflect this loss, given that they did lose their starting quarterback in the previous week on top of this loss against the Bearcats. Then we had the Nebraska Wesleyan Prairie Wolves, who entered today's game, or last week's game, as #10 in the country. They played against a St. Olaf's Olds team who has been pretty competitive inside that big Pacific Conference. They end up beating Nebraska Wesleyan 23-11. Always good to see a 2-possession win, even if it's against a ranked team that was projected to beat you coming into last week. So Nebraska Wesleyan is no longer undefeated, and St. Olaf will improve to 2-1. Then we have one of the more surprising games of the week, and even in the midst of all of these upsets that have occurred throughout college football in this All Created Teams universe over the course of week 3, we had George Fox taking on the Hamlin Pipers, who looked extremely impressive over the course of the first 2 weeks of the season. But it looks like they fell into the classic trap game, as they kind of overlooked George Fox, and the Bruins paid for it as they defeat the Hamlin Pipers 21-9, notching a win against what was a top 5 team in the nation, and sitting at #3 going into this game. But they will definitely take a fall after this defeat. Then we have the now #2 ranked team in the country in the Methodist Monarchs. They went on the road to play against the Buffalo State Bengals, who were having an extremely tough time as they lost pretty big over the course of week 2. They lost 30-7 to Nebraska Wesleyan, and it was a similar result for the Buffalo State Bengals as they fall to 0-3, losing to the Methodist Monarchs 37-3 in what really wasn't much of a contest from the get-go. Next game on the week 3 recap, we have the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, who entered into this game 2-0 and ranked as the #11 team in the country. They went on the road to play against the Christopher Newport Captains, who were 1-1 on the young season. It was a really close game, and I thought Christopher Newport was ultimately going to end up pulling off the upset, but Johns Hopkins was able to get a last-minute touchdown and beat Christopher Newport 24-20 in what was a pretty exciting game. But Johns Hopkins will still be undefeated, sitting at 3-0. going into week 4. And then we have yet another upset on the horizon, although it kind of shows who deserved to actually be in the top 25. St. John Fisher, despite being undefeated, wasn't ranked in the top 25 whatsoever. They played a host to Concordia Moorhead, home of the Cobbers, as they were ranked number 19 in the country. But St. John Fisher took care of business, winning this game 27-14, and will likely earn them an appearance into the top 25 when that poll comes out later on in this episode. So make sure you stick around for that to see which teams make the leap and which teams take a free fall towards the bottom. Speaking of top 25 movement, we had 2 top 25 teams play each other in the number 6 ranked Bates Bobcats go on the road to play against the number 25 in the TCNJ Lions out in New Jersey, in which TCNJ proved that they deserved to be in the top 25 and much more, beating Bates 27-6. The Technical College of New Jersey will move up to 3-0 on the season, whereas the Bates Bobcats take their first defeat on the season. They will fall to 2-1. Then we have the Bethel Royals, who entered that game as the number 15 team in the country. They played host to the Central Colonials, who at one point were ranked as high as number 3, or it was number 4, but they were ranked in the top 5 going into the season, and they're definitely one of the most disappointing teams this season because they now fall to 0-3 following a 22-35 loss to the Bethel Royals, who will improve to 3-0. Then we have the RPI Engineers, who were 2-0 and were coming in as the 12th ranked team in the country. They went on the road to play against the Sewanee Tigers, hailing from the Southern Athletic Association and an original founder of the SEC Conference. However, they did not play like your typical SEC team. They ended up losing 7-0 to the RPI Engineers, as RPI will improve to 3-0 on the season, whereas Sewanee will still be looking for their very first victory as they fall to 0-3 thus far. Next up, we have the Texas Lutheran Bulldogs, who were 0-1 going into this game. They play against the Mary Hardin Baylor Crusaders, who are making their very first appearance this season on a conference network from many of the other content creators that are collabing with me on this Dynasty. Mary Hardin Baylor had the opportunity to tie this game, but they opted to go for 2, even though they were the favorites to win this game, and that 2-point conversion ended up failing. So Mary Hardin Baylor, they ended up losing this game to an underdog in Texas Lutheran, who was looking for their first win, by a pretty ugly score of 9-8. So it was definitely pretty discouraging to see, but you gotta live and learn, and hopefully Mary Hardin Baylor will recover from that kind of critical mistake that happened at the end of this game. And then finally, the last notable game that I wanted to recap was the Howard Payne Yellow Jackets, who were number 23 in the country. They went on the road to play against the Wilmington Quakers, who were 0-2, and they will still be looking for their first victory because Wilmington did end up losing to the ranked Howard Payne Yellow Jackets by a score of 23-0. In what was a defensively tough game for Wilmington, gotta give them credit for keeping their defense in the game as long as possible, but if your offense can't get any points on the board, then you're never gonna win any games, and so that's how you end up with this kind of result, even though Wilmington did play a better game than what the score shows. But nice win for Howard Payne, as they will improve to 3-0 on the season. Alright, so that is all of the notable games that have happened over the course of week 3. I'm going to go ahead and shift off to the unveiling of the new top 25 poll to see what movement has taken place. I'm sure there's going to be quite a bit going on, as we're looking at several teams actually, that did get upset. I'm counting 14 upsets, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of movement in this top 25. So without further ado, here comes your top 25 rankings. Next up, we have the top 25 coaches poll going into week 4, and just kind of a recap of what this top 25 is looking like. The Methodist Monarchs and the Otterbein Cardinals do switch positions. Both teams last week were the top 2 teams in the country, and that's still going to be the case, except Methodist will now be number 1 and Otterbein is number 2. The biggest riser of the week, though, has to be the Illinois Wesleyan Titans, who came into last week unranked, but now they climb all the way up to number 8 after getting an impressive start to their season, with St. John Fisher being honorable mention, going unranked to number 9, and then finally the biggest faller, just falling out of the sky but yet still clinging on to the top 25 poll. We have the William Patterson Pioneers. After losing to Southern Virginia University, they fall from number 4 last week all the way down to number 25 in this week's version of the coaches poll. Let me know down in the comments what surprises you the most about this coaches poll going into week 4 of the All Created Teams Dynasty. We are on the week 4 screen, looking forward to seeing what kind of action we're going to be seeing over the course of next week, as well as some of the games that won't be on any YouTube channel over the course of this week. So any game that's not going to be on my channel or on a channel that I'm going to be collabing with, I am going to go ahead and sim that so you can see the results in real time, because I have no idea what's going to happen. We about to find out as a collective group together. So first we're going to start with my Mount Union game, week 4. We're going to go on the road against Tufts, who is 2-1, but they took a blowout loss to Otterbein. If Otterbein can beat him, then maybe we can beat him as well. Maybe not by the tune of 70-7, but at this point we need to start getting some wins together, because being 1-2 already is unacceptable. That game is going to be on my channel tomorrow night, actually at 6 p.m. Eastern, so make sure to tune in when that happens. Up next, we have the 2-1 Carleton Knights, who are coming off a nice home upset against the 18th ranked McMurray Warhawks. They go on the road to play against the 25th ranked William Patterson Pioneers, who are now 25th in the country after losing 12-10 to Southern Virginia. This game is not going to be on any channel, so we're going to go ahead and sim this game and see what we got going here as we get to the first results. And Carleton beats William Patterson 21-17 in what's going to be the first upset, and Carleton's going to move up to 3-1 on the season, while William Patterson falls to 2-2. Next, we have the Amherst Mammoths taking on the Utica Pioneers. Amherst at one point was ranked number 2 in the country, but they haven't won a single game yet, whereas Utica, they played back in week 2. They upset Juniata, who was ranked in the top 5 at one point, but they're coming off a upset victory. But after they finish their game, will Utica get their first win or second win? And yes, they do. They beat the Amherst Mammoths by a score of 29-23, and who Amherst is going to set themselves up as being one of the more disappointing teams over the course of the season. They were ranked number 2, and now they're on an 0-4 start. Next, we have the Union Dutchmen taking on the Albion Britons, who were ranked last week, but that's not going to be the case. Looking to get back on track here, as both teams are looking to get on the right track. But Union is going to move up to 2-2, beating the Albion Britons 37-26. This will be their second straight loss for the Albion Britons. Then we have the Alfred Saxons going on the road to play against the Ursinus Bears, who fall to number 16 in the country, but they still are undefeated and they still are a pretty dangerous squad. They won't be on any content creators channel for this week's slate of games, but they do have a pretty exciting game actually, as Ursinus actually loses to Alfred by a score of 40-30 in what is a pretty exciting game. Alfred will move up to 2-1 on the season, while as Ursinus will take their first defeat of the season. Then we have the Leslie Wolverines going on the road to play against the Technical College of New Jersey, home of the Lions, as they are now 3-0, and they moved up to number 7 after their win against the Bates Bobcats last week. This game will be the featured game for the Sunshine Conference, and it will be by ADLN, who will be replacing Poolwater Team for the time being due to mental health reasons. So make sure to check him out. He will be linked down in the description below, as well as every game that conference coordinators put on their channels. They will be in the conference coordinators playlist, so make sure to go ahead and check that out. Then we have the Belhaven Blazers taking on the Sul Ross State Lobos, and will be an unranked matchup. Sul Ross State is coming off a nice win against the number 2 ranked team in the country in the Methodist Monarchs. However, what just transpired is that Belhaven beat Sul Ross State by a score of 30-25. So Belhaven will get their second win of the season, whereas Sul Ross State falls back to the norm, losing by 5 points. However, we do have a pretty exciting game of the week going for you guys, as we have 2 top 5 teams going at it against each other within the Super South Conference, as both teams are tied for the top of this prestigious league, as Methodist will be ranked number 1 in the country, whereas West Hartford is currently ranked number 5. That will be on my channel this Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, so make sure to tune into that when that game drops, because I'm sure it's going to be an amazing game when that happens. Then we have Hobart going on the road to play against the Morrisville State Mustangs, who are 3-0 on the young season and have moved up to number 6 on the season. This game will be featured by Craniac Gaming, so make sure to check that out later on this week. Up next, we have the McDaniel Green Thunder going on the road to play against the Illinois Wesleyan Titans, who are also 3-0 in their own right and are ranked number 8 in the country, in which TNJ will be broadcasting the game on his channel later on this week. McDaniel does have a nice blowout victory early on this season, but I don't think they played anybody reasonably tough thus far, so it'll be interesting to see what McDaniel is made of. Once again, this will be on TNJ's channel. Link will be down in the description below. Then we have the Howard Payne Yellow Jackets coming off a 23-0 win against the Wilmington Quakers. After moving up to number 10 in the country, they will be hosting the Southwestern Pirates, who are 1-2 on the season, and this game will be featured by Franchise Gaming. Then we have the East Texas Baptist Tigers, who are 1-2 on the season. They go on the road to play against the McMurray Warhawks, who were in the top 25. However, after they lost to Carleton, who, as you saw, just got another victory against a top 25 team. They're out of the top 25, so hopefully McMurray will get themselves back on track, while East Texas Baptist is looking to even their record at 2-2. And it looks like East Texas Baptist is going to barely pull it out, winning the game 31-30. What an extremely close game. And East Texas Baptist will move up to 2-2, whereas the McMurray Warhawks, they're going to lose their second game in a row. Then we have the St. John Fisher Cardinals, who moved up to 3-0 on the season after beating the Concordia Moorhead Cobbers, who were ranked number 19 in the country at the time. They go on the road to play against the Colby Mules, who are 0-2 right now, but in this crazy world of college football, you never know. They aren't going to be on a YouTube channel, so we're going to go ahead and sim this game, and St. John's Fisher is going to eke out a 26-20 win, moving up to 4-0 on the young season. Then we have the Hardin-Simmons Cowboys, who are 1-2. They haven't won a single game since beating DePaul back in week 1. They go on the road to play against the Louisiana College Wildcats, who beat my Mount Union team by a score of 38-12. Fortunately, this game will be not on any YouTube channels either, so we'll see what the simulation says, and we are looking at a 35-28 win for the Louisiana College Wildcats as they will move up to 3-1 on the season, whereas Hardin-Simmons will fall to 1-3. Then we have the Hamlin Pipers, who are 2-1 on the season. They fall all the way down to number 22 after their loss to George Fox in the previous week, but they go on the road to play against the St. Olaf O's, who are 2-1 and are coming off a top 10 victory against the Nebraska Wesleyan Prairie Wolves. This game will not be on any channels either, so we'll see what happens with the simulation here. And gotta scroll down here for a second, and Hamlin does get back on track. They beat St. Olaf 41-20. Hamlin makes another statement game as they win their third game, whereas St. Olaf, they fall down to 2-2. Then we have the Franklin and Marshall Diplomats, who are 0-2 on the season. They go on the road to play against the Finlandia Lions, who are 1-2 on the season. This game doesn't really merit any consideration for being on TV, but it looks like Finlandia scores and they lose by a score of 34-26. Franklin and Marshall will move up to 1-2 on the season, whereas Finlandia falls down to 1-3. Next up, we have the Mary Hardin Baylor Crusaders going on the road to play against the Ithaca Bombers, who are also 2-1 in their own right. Mary Hardin Baylor was ranked at one point, but they did lose last week to Texas Lutheran. But Ithaca, they never been ranked at any point in the season, but with a 3-1 record, they could potentially get back into that. We'll just have to see what happens here. And looks like what ended up happening is that Mary Hardin Baylor, they will get back on track after their head-scratching loss to Texas Lutheran and beat Ithaca by a score of 35-29. Mary Hardin Baylor will move up to 3-1, whereas Ithaca falls to 2-2. Next up, we have some Big North Conference action between the Heidelberg Student Princes, sitting at 1-2, playing against the undefeated William F's, who are number 15 in the country, but aren't going to be on any YouTube channels. So we're going to see how this game turns out very early on. And it looks like Williams ends up losing the football game. Heidelberg beats Williams 33-27 in what will be a really good win for those Heidelberg Student Princes, as they are the first team to beat Williams this season. Then we have the Kalamazoo Hornets, who are 1-1 and took the week off last week. They go on the road to play against the Southern Virginia Knights, who are fresh off a 12-10 victory against the then number 4 team in the country in the William Patterson Pioneers. This could be a trap game for Southern Virginia, as Kalamazoo is, a very decent squad, so it could be a trap game, and it was a trap game indeed, as Kalamazoo does beat Southern Virginia 30-29 in order to move to 2-1 on the season and tied for second place as of right now in the National Athletic Conference. Up next, we have the UW Stout Blue Devils, who are 0-3 on the season. They go on the road to play against the UW Lacrosse Eagles, who are 3-0 in their own right and are number 14 in the country. This game will be featured by Octagonal Gaming later on this week. Staying within the Big Pacific Conference, we have the UW Oshkosh Titans playing host to the St. John's Johnnies, as we have a exciting big Pacific Conference game on our hands, even though it won't be on TV. We'll of course show you what that score is going to be, whether St. John's or Oshkosh ends up winning the game, and it looks like none other than Oshkosh pulling off the victory and beating St. John's by a score of 29-26. Up next, we have the Claremont Mud Scripps Stags, who are 0-2, playing against a team that is also playing for their first victory in the Sewanee Tigers. Both teams are looking for their very first victory right now, but we're going to find out who's going to get their first victory on the season. And it looks like it's going to be Claremont Mud Scripps, who beats Sewanee by a score of 34-27. Claremont will get their first victory on the season, whereas Sewanee will fall down to 0-4. Next, we have the Pacific Boxers, who are 0-3, taking on the Milliken Big Blue, who are looking to get some positive momentum after beating the North Central Cardinals over the course during week 3. So we'll find out who gets there, if Milliken can keep the momentum going, or if Pacific gets their first win of the season. And it looks like Pacific will still be looking for that first win, as Milliken does beat Pacific by a score of 29-20. Then we have the Winfield Wildcats going on the road to play against the Puget Sound Loggers, who are making their first appearance in the top 25 in the young season. Big C Got Game will handle the coverage of this exciting ball game, as looks like we'll be pretty interested to see who comes out on top. So once again, Big C Got Game will be handling this ball game. Speaking of some interesting ball games, we have the Adrian Bulldogs, who are 2-1. They were ranked in the top 25 but did lose last week. They go on the road to play against the Iowa Wesleyan Tigers, who are 0-2 on the season so far. As Iowa and Wesleyan, they are looking for their first win of the season, and it looks like they actually get it, and it's in a style fashion, as Iowa Wesleyan beats Adrian by a score of 47-24. So what a fantastic game for the Iowa Wesleyan Tigers as they get their first win, while Adrian falls to 2-2. Speaking of teams that are taking a fall from grace, Nebraska Wesleyan Prairie Wolves, after being upset in the previous week, they play the Rowan Profs, who did beat Alma in the previous week to a tune of 35-24. This game will not be on any television set, but we'll find out right now who's going to come out on top. Whether Nebraska Wesleyan will get their third win, or Rowan gets 2 wins in a row, and Rowan's going to get their second victory in a row in huge fashion. Rowan beats Nebraska Wesleyan 42-23. Guilford will then play Salisbury in what should be an interesting Sunshine Conference matchup to try and claw their way out of the bottom of the conference, one of the smaller conferences in this all-created teams dynasty. Salisbury will end up beating Guilford 40-22 in order to get their first victory. Next game on the docket is the Birmingham Southern Panthers, who were ranked in the top 25 at one point, but they've lost 3 straight games to start the season. They play against the Wesleyan Cardinals, who are 1-2 so far, but are looking to even up their record, and it looks like they're gonna have to wait longer to even think about it, as Birmingham Southern does earn their first victory of the season, winning by a score of 33-27. Up next, we have the Gusties of Gustavus Adolphus, if I'm hopefully saying that correctly. They go on the road to play against the Hartwick Hawks, who are a quiet 1-1 thus far in the season. See what happens here between these two teams. and it looks like Hartwick is going to improve to 2-1 following a 34-12 beating of the Gusties, as they are still looking for their first win. After that, we go to some Big North football as the Hamilton Continentals go on the road to play against the Muskegon Muskies, who are 1-1 on this season. Both teams are looking for their second win of the season, but only one of these teams can go and get it. And it looks like Hamilton comes out on top by a narrow margin of 37-35, as Muskegon will fall to 1-2. Then we have the North Carolina Wesleyan Battling Bishops taking on the Hendrick Warriors, in which both teams are now unranked after previously being ranked in the top 25. However, one team will have the chance to move back, or at least put themselves in a good position to get back to that point. And after some tough, hard-fought football, Hendricks will win their third game of the season, beating North Carolina Wesleyan 41-29. Up next, we have the Rochester Yellow Jackets, who did fall out of the top 25 after their loss to, they lost to Willamette last week for their first loss of the season. They will now take on the Buffalo State Bengals, and they're looking for their first win. I don't think they're going to get it here, but, we're still be interested to find out if that changes here. I highly doubt it. And I am right, because Rochester beats Buffalo State despite playing their backup quarterback. Once again, they have their backup. And Rochester beat Buffalo State 34-13 despite playing their backup. Next, we have the Middlebury Panthers, who won the Week 1 game of the week against Amherst, but sit at 2-1 and are unranked, playing against the Cortland Red Dragons, who are 0-2 on the season thus far. And we're going to see who is going to win this football game. And it looks like Middlebury is going to win the game once again, and they move up to 3-1 on the season, beating Cortland by a score of 42-30. Then we have the Austin Kangaroos, who are 0-3. They play North Park, as Austin is still looking for their first win of the young season, and they will still be looking as Austin loses to North Park 32-27. Austin will fall to 0-4, whereas North Park does improve to 2-2 on the season after starting the season 0-2. Next up, we have the Central Colonels playing up against the Millsap Majors, both teams who are still looking for their first win of the season. Millsaps, I kind of expected them to be here, whereas Central, they were number 3 in the country, but one of these teams have to win, and it looks like the team that actually does win is Central, who does narrowly defeat Millsaps by a score of 31-30. Alright, so next up we have Baldwin Wallace taking on the Benedictine Eagles, who are making their first appearance in the top 25 poll. They're 2-0 on the season. They're ranked number 17 in the country. They won't be on TV, but as with other games that won't appear on my channel or another person's channel, we're going to go ahead and sim the game so you can see the results in real time. And Benedictine is going to beat Baldwin Wallace by a score of 42-22. Moving up to 3-0 on the season. Then we have the Ohio Northern Polar Bears, who are currently ranked number 13 in the country, taking on the Dickinson Red Devils, who I believe are from the Atlantic Shore Conference, but they're on that lower end. So I feel like Ohio Northern should win this game, even though it won't be on TV for us to see. And it looks like that will be confirmed, as Ohio Northern does beat Dickinson 37-31 and moves up to 4-0 on the season. Next, we have the Rose-Hulman Engineers, one of two teams that are from the Heartland Collegiate Athletic Conference, in the real life Division 3. They go on the road to play against the George Fox Bruins, fresh off a big win against Hamlin University. When a push comes to shove, though, does George Fox have a little bit of hangover from last week's win? And it looks like that will be the case, as Rose Homan does beat George Fox 32-18. Next, we have the Hope Flying Dutchman out of Michigan taking on the Wheaton Thunder, who are coming off an upset victory against the Moravian Greyhounds. Both teams are looking to move themselves up in the standings of their respective conference. Hope from the National Athletic Conference and Wheaton from the one and only Midwestern Conference. Wheaton will go ahead and improve to 2-1, though. They beat the Hope Flying Dutchman 35-22. Gettysburg Bullets are number 24 in the country. They're going to be taking on the number 12 RPI Engineers in what should be a pretty good game to watch. Gridiron Games will be handling that. Then we have the now number 2 ranked Otterbein Cardinals, who switch places with the Methodist Monarchs. They start their conference play against the Marietta Pioneers. Sin with Vengeance will be providing the game on my channel later on this week. The Trine Thunder, who are now ranked number 18 in the country, they go on the road to play against the Bethany Bison, and the coach himself will be broadcasting this game on his channel later on this week. Next, we have the Wartburg Knights, who are 0-3 this season so far. They take on the Alma Scots, who were ranked in the top 25, but they did get upset last week. But they should bounce back, as Wartburg has had a difficult season so far. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Wartburg did win, since they played some tough competition. And, it looks like we do get that upset, as Wartburg beats Alma 32-22 in order to get their first victory. Then we have the Texas Lutheran Bulldogs taking on the number 20th ranked team in the country, in the Manchester Spartans, who are also from the HCAC with Rose Holman, who did win earlier on in this simulation. This game won't be on any channels, but we'll see if Manchester can stay undefeated, and it looks like that will indeed be the case, as Manchester beats Texas Lutheran 34-28. Next, we have the Olivet Comets taking on the Grinnell Pioneers, who did cancel their season in real life, but in the All Created Teams Dynasty, in this simulation that we got with the video games, their football season is still going. They're taking on Olivet. Question is, can they beat Olivet? And the answer is a resounding yes, actually, because Olivet does beat Grinnell 35-26. Next, we have the Wisconsin Whitewater Warhawks taking on the Stevens Point Pointers in some big Pacific Conference play. Whitewater is looking to improve to 3-1, where Stevens Point is just trying to get back to even, and it looks like we have the Warhawks falling to Stevensport 28-25. Next up in Big North Conference play, we have the DePaul Tigers on the road to play against the Capital Crusaders. Both teams are looking to go 1-2 on the season, or not 1-2, but 2-2 on the season. But it looks like DePaul is going to get the nod in the simulation, because DePaul will end up beating Capital 38-35. Then we have the Montclair State Redhawks going on the road to play against the Bowdoin Polar Bears, who are 2-1 on the season, but can they get to 3-1? And the answer is no, because Montclair State will end up beating them 42-28 and do end up winning their second game of the season. We also have the Barry Vikings, who were the preseason #1 team. They are back in the top 25 rankings at number 21 in the country. They go on to play against the Trinity Tigers, in which Royal and Poison will be hopefully broadcasting this game on his channel later on this week. Next, we have the Augustania Vikings, who are 0-2, taking on the Augsburg Aggies, who are trying to get their second win of the young season. And after a long scroll towards the bottom of the screen, Augustania does beat Augsburg 27-21, and the Vikings will get their first win of the season. Then we have the St. Lawrence Saints, who are 1-2 on the season. They take on the Concordia Moorhead Cobbers, who are a former top 25 team in the country, who did lose to St. John's Fisher last week, which isn't a bad loss at all, but they do fall out of the top 25, and it looks like that they will be working their way back in it after a 45-17 win against St. Lawrence. And then finally, the last notable game that will be featured on another person's channel is TCM Sports' broadcast of the Susquehanna Riverhawks going on the road to play against the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, who are currently ranked all the way up to number 4 in the country once again. TCM Sports will be covering this game on his channel. I want to mention before signing off on this edition of the podcast is the Moravian Greyhounds versus Juniata Eagles game. Moravian does win 37-21 in order to improve to 3-1 on the season. Muhlenberg gets their first win against the Bates Bobcats as they get their first win on the season, winning 28-24. The Rhodes Lynx play the Wilmington Quakers, who are looking for their first win, and looks like they will still be looking as they lose to Rhodes 33-26. Then we have the number 11 team in the country in the Carthage Redmen. They played the Keene Cougars, in which King actually wins this game by a score of 28-23, upsetting the number 11 team in the country. Carl then also played the Washington University in Missouri, I believe. Actually in St. Louis, excuse me. They will fall to 1-3 though, as they lose to the Carroll Pioneers, who improved to 3-1 on the season. And then finally, the last game that was on the week 4 docket, before we get into the games played in broadcast by other YouTubers, is the Elmhurst versus Pacific Lutherans game. Pacific Lutheran nearly beat West Hartford in the previous week, but they end up losing by a wider margin to Elmhurst by a score of 33-17. Hey, so this is all I have for this podcast. I tried a new format to try to get more scores in from games that aren't going to be broadcast. So let me know if you like this format or if you want me to go into a different direction. Until then, thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Make sure you leave a like, as well as hit that subscribe button for me if you really enjoy my content and you're brand new to the channel as well. Until then, I'll see you guys next time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.